So if Houston is the ambitious, hardworking father, and Dallas is the hospitable, good-looking mother, then I would say that makes San Antonio the more stable, supportive, older sibling, and that makes Austin the more unpredictable and adventurous younger sibling. Now, obviously, a comparison of the two cities, San Antonio and Austin, is going to be much more in-depth than just that analogy. And in this video, we are going to talk about what it's like to live in either San Antonio or Austin, and leave it up to you to decide which one is the right fit. So, if that's the reason you clicked on this video, stay tuned. Hello again, everybody. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Frank. I'm part of our team at the award-winning JB Goodwin Brokerage right here in Austin, Texas. Every week we put out new content all in regards to what it's like to live in Austin, Texas, whether it's pros and cons, whether it's comparisons of cities and states like this one, whether it's vlog tours of certain areas and suburbs, different neighborhoods, you name it, we do it, and it's what we love to do. So be sure to subscribe to the channel for more, ring the little bell so that you're notified every time we put out a new video. And this YouTube thing has been an absolute blast. We've been loving the reach outs we've been getting from people moving and relocating here all the time. We pride ourselves in making the relocation process as smooth and easy as possible, getting those offers accepted, and making your life easier, putting you in that perfect spot. So if that applies to you, be sure to reach out to us, whether it's days, nights, or weekends. Email us, call us, text us, any day of the week, any time of day, because we've got your back when moving to Austin, Texas. So when comparing Austin and San Antonio, there is quite a bit to unpack. So I figure let's just get our feet wet first in the beginning, and then towards the end we can get into those juicy numbers that everyone wants to know in regards to the cost of living and the differences between the two cities. So for starters, let's talk about a fun one, and that would be the subject of traffic. Now, Austin's population density is actually more than twice as much as San Antonio's. In addition, Austin is also ranked 19th in the country of most congested cities for traffic. Now, in my opinion, I think that's because the population here in Austin really grew much quicker than the infrastructure of the city could even keep up with. In my lifetime here, which has been probably since 1998, 1999, when I was a wee little lad, we've seen it absolutely explode. And as many of you know now, much of Silicon Valley is moving here, Elon Musk is moving here, all these tech companies, Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, and many more. And same with the people. I mean, it's no secret anymore that Austin is actually the #1 city in the country for relocation. So it's really become a melting pot of different cultures, creeds, backgrounds, ethnicities. And I think the city was just a little bit too slow, or really didn't plan for the influx of people that we have coming here. So we're seeing the traffic get worse and worse and worse. I remember in 2017, I moved to California and I stayed there just for about a year. And of course, I got used to the horrific traffic that was in Los Angeles, of course. Awful, you know, it has a reputation for a reason. But even I noticed in that 1 year I was gone, from 2016 to 2018, that gap, whenever I came back, Austin's traffic wasn't amazing to begin with, but it certainly wasn't bad. And when I got back, of course, it was a breath of fresh air compared to a city like Los Angeles. It'll never be like that, at least for another 10, 20, 30 years. But I could already notice that certain roads I used to take a lot would already start backing up at 2 or 3 in the afternoon when it never would before. And that's just one example. So we are seeing traffic really increasing here. They're trying to build around it, but then they're always in construction, which makes the traffic even worse. And it's just this cycle of traffic that's just not really improving. Now with San Antonio, it's actually better than Austin in my opinion. And I'm not saying that San Antonio is free of traffic by any means, because any city you have is gonna have traffic. but I will say that San Antonio was established with a little more space to work with. It's like they had their feet under them and could work with the growth they were receiving. And on top of that, the freeways there, for the most part, are a little bit wider. It's a little bit more spread out, and it feels just less of a city. So in terms of traffic, which is a big deal to a lot of people watching this who are going to be commuting to work, something to keep in mind. Now let's talk a little bit about cultures. Now for Austin, I would say, yes, it has a culture. It's very weird. It's very eclectic. It's very youthful. It's very vibrant. It's very artistic. So I would describe the culture in that way. But I would say the culture is more just that Austin feels more like a city. We have our famous 6th Street. We have our famous Domain. We have our music festivals. We call ourselves the music capital of the world. We're very health conscious. You'll find local cafes, beer joints, novelty food, outdoor amenities, things like that really give it that city life, that vibe as well. And more importantly, Austin, first and foremost, was a college town. I remember when I was younger, it still, before it really popped, was still a college town. Yeah, it was growing and more people were coming, of course, and it was expanding real time, but nothing like it was today. It was still the city in Texas that had the University of Texas, that had the capital, but that was really it. The culture doesn't really go back beyond that, except for maybe Willie Nelson. And when it comes to San Antonio, that's the city where I would say you really feel the rich culture. And if I'm not mistaken, San Antonio also has the highest Hispanic Latino population percentage in all of America. Now that's something I learned, I'd say about a year or two ago, so if it's no longer number one, forgive me, but if it isn't, it's surely number 2 or 3. It really has that as part of its culture. A lot of people from Mexico move up here all the time, and they really take a liking to San Antonio. It's a beautiful culture. And it also has been dubbed the military city of the USA, meaning it really is friendly to military. It's part of the culture there. You have a great military community. You have great veteran resources, endless military support organizations. And yes, as you can imagine, it is going to lean politically a little bit more to the right. Now, you're not going to necessarily see a bunch of people driving in humongous trucks waving Confederate flags all over the place. You'll see that in other parts of Texas, whereas in San Antonio, it's just more traditional with a strong foundation and honestly, great people. Whereas Austin, since this is a comparison, is very liberal, very progressive, very forward-thinking. It's been called the blue dot in the sea of red that is Texas. So I'm not saying which one is right or wrong. I'm just saying if you are thinking of moving here and you are someone who leans either way, that's just something to keep in mind when you're planning your move. San Antonio is also very rich in its history. Now, if you've brushed up lately at all in your American history or Texas history, which I guess is really just taught here, you'll have heard of the Alamo, which took place right in the heart of San Antonio. You can still visit. I've been numerous times, and it's a lot more fun than you think. I mean, naturally, you wouldn't assume that a historical landmark would be a fun place to take your kids and spend the day, but it really is. You learn a lot. I had fun as a kid when I went, and in that same area you have a lot of other fun things to do to make part of your day. You have Ripley's Believe It or Not, you have Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, and real quick before I lose the thought, those are some of my happiest memories. Now, I spent a lot of time in San Antonio growing up, not just because it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours south of Austin, which if you live in Texas, that's actually a pretty short drive, because Dallas is about 4 hours, Houston can be about 3.5 hours. So your local city that's not Austin, if you want to go on a little mini vacation, is San Antonio. And in addition to that, my lovely grandparents actually live in Schertz, which is a suburb of San Antonio. So practically all my life, I've been going down there periodically to spend time with them and to experience the city. And I remember Ripley's Believe It or Not being an absolute blast. I mean, one of my favorite parts was you walk through this tunnel. It's all indoors. You walk in this tunnel. I don't know why I had to specify it's indoors, but you walk through this tunnel and nothing's moving. It's a straight railing where you're grabbing onto the rails, and because you have to balance, and they have, I guess, a screen all around you, but beneath you, left and the right, above you, that's doing all the spinning, and there's strobes, and it's just kind of disorienting. And I mean, if you just close your eyes and walk straight, you'd be fine, right? But because your eyes are open, you kind of just wobble around, and it's just such a blast. And there's other things to do there as well. And then the Wax Museum, not gonna lie, not one of the best wax museums I've ever been to. I know Madame Tussauds is very popular in this country and also internationally, but San Antonio's version of it, well, I don't know. Some people look very much the way they're supposed to. Or I guess a lot of people don't. I remember not being disappointed, but just kind of like, oh, that's Oprah. Okay, that's what she looks like, you know. So it'll be fun, but it won't blow you away. I remember in particular being a little bit disappointed in how they did Michael Jackson, which fair game, you know, he changed a lot throughout his life, but it wasn't the best attempt. Even little Michael, you know, even little Motown Mike, just was like, what? No, but it's a great time. And on top of all of that, you're very close to the staple of San Antonio, which is the Riverwalk. Now, before we move on, be sure to comment down below if you have any questions. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you have any ideas for future videos we could make for you guys? Drop them down below, and be sure to like the video as well, as it tells us we're doing a good job in providing value to you guys. It really helps us grow, and we'd greatly appreciate it. And if you're curious about more than just a comparison with San Antonio, check out our other videos such as Austin versus Houston, Austin versus Dallas, and even Austin versus California. We're looking to grow our comparisons a whole lot more over the coming weeks, so stay tuned for those. If you've ever watched an NBA game, particularly an NBA Spurs game, they'll say, welcome back to this broadcast. We have the Spurs facing insert team name here. And without fail, they will always show an aerial shot of the Riverwalk. And it really is, in my opinion, the best thing to do in San Antonio. I'm sorry if that makes me sound basic, but it is. I mean, even San Antonians probably should and would tell you that. Now, what I love about the Riverwalk is it really just wraps around so much of the city of San Antonio, and it's surrounded by shops, it's surrounded by eateries. You can gaze upon it and just enjoy a glass of wine and a meal while you're looking at people go by, or you can actually get on the river itself on one of these little boats where it just kind of softly just goes through and you're looking around and enjoying it. And it doesn't sound like much, but you can spend hours upon hours doing this. And it's something you can keep doing over and over again with your family, with your date. It's just one of the best things to do there. Now with Austin, there really isn't as much of a staple thing to do. There are well-known things to do in Austin, like seeing a live musician or going to the bridge downtown to see the bats go out at sunset, hitting 6th Street or Rainy Street with your friends and enjoying some drinks, bar hopping and all that good stuff, going to the Domain to walk around or enjoying Rock Rose on the Domain, which is another bar strip, or even just shopping. We have a Domain video as well, so check that out if you're curious. But there really isn't a staple destination or thing to do in Austin. It's more of that, like I said, city life where there's an abundance of things to do, but nothing necessarily defining. Now, something I will say in favor of Austin, in defense of Austin, that I briefly touched on earlier in this video, is the fact that it is the self-proclaimed music capital of the world. We have the Austin Reggae Festival, which most people just call Marley Fest. We have South by Southwest, we have ACL, and these are humongous events. I mean, maybe not like Coachella, but same ballpark. I mean, all the big names come here. Anyone you've heard of has probably been here for one of those festivals, if they are in kind of, you know, mainstream popular music right now. If you're like me and you're into the oldies of the 60s and 70s, 80s, even 90s, or 50s, I like some of my old stuff, my really old stuff, you're not gonna see any of that, of course, because they're either dead or they're very old, but, you know, they're not very mainstream anymore, you know what I mean? They might still be touring and they might come to Austin, but don't hold your breath for those types of artists. You're really gonna see the big names, you know, the ones that get ratings for the Grammys and things like that. They're gonna come here, and it really is a much more youthful event. I'm not saying you only see young people there, but I'm just saying when I was 18, 19, that's what I did. So you're gonna see a lot of that as well. But yeah, it's very fun, and it is a staple of Austin. But it's not really a destination like the Riverwalk. It's more of that special occasion that comes a handful of times a year. And I will say, if you're a local Austinite like myself, unless there's someone that you're really just dying to see, most Austinites are gonna stay inside, keep to themselves when those festivals are going on. Because when they are, we like to lay low because that traffic that's already pretty bad gets so much worse. It is insanity because you have all these visitors, all these tourists coming here to see their favorite artists, and a city that already struggles with keeping up with the population just implodes, during festival season. Now for San Antonio, their equivalent of that, and I say that very loosely because I'm not talking about music festivals here, but their occasional equivalent of something that goes on every year is what they call the Week of Fiesta. It's less of a tourist attraction and it's more so community building. I've heard it called the Party with a Purpose. It lasts a full week. San Antonians all come together and a lot of the funds benefit the city and the citizens of San Antonio. And that plays into what I said about how San Antonio just has more of a culture, a togetherness, a foundation, whereas Austin's occasion is tourism, lots of people coming here, and that's more consistent and in line with Austin's culture as well. So you can see how they really compare in that sense. And before I move on completely from the subject of things to do in each respective city, something I'd like to touch on in relation to that is the subject of nature. Now, in my opinion, I think I've been praising San Antonio quite a bit in this video, so let's balance it out. I would say Austin has better nature than San Antonio. Not to say San Antonio isn't pretty, but in Austin, you've got Lake Travis, you've got Lake Georgetown, you've got Lady Bird Lake, you've got Lake Austin, you've got swimming holes, you've got hiking trails, you've got the hills, and a lot of Austin's reputation in general is that health-conscious, active lifestyle. So you're gonna see more green, you're gonna see more trees, you're gonna see more gorgeous landscapes and things to do. Obviously, nothing like a state where it's already gorgeous, like Montana or Oregon or Washington State or one of these, but for Texas's standards, yes, very pretty, and I would say more so than San Antonio. Now, in defense of San Antonio, if you're anything like me and you want to have a beer in a koozie, sit in a tube, and float on a river, that is absolutely one of the best things you can do in San Antonio. Yes, you can still do it in Austin. You can even do it in between Austin and San Antonio in a place called San Marcos. It's more of a college town. But San Antonio has an abundance of more options for that floating river type of fun. If you've never done it, oh my goodness, please do it at least once in your life, even if it's not your thing to bump elbows with a total stranger. I'm sorry, that was it's more fun than that, obviously, but even if it's not your thing, definitely try it because you really wouldn't believe how relaxing it is to just kick back with your friends, with your family, and just chill. Let the river take you to the end. Enjoy it and just have a good time. And so yeah, I will say Austin has better nature overall, but if you particularly, and we're getting niche here, if you have a particular taste for floating rivers, San Antonio is the place for you. Another subject I'd like to briefly touch on is the subject of sports. I've mentioned this in our Dallas video, and I've mentioned it in the Houston video, so I'm gonna mention it in this San Antonio video. Now, unlike Houston or Dallas, neither Austin or San Antonio really has an abundance of national pro sports teams. If we're talking about Houston and Dallas, we could talk about the Rockets, the Texans, the Cowboys, the Astros. But when it comes to Austin and San Antonio, the only one you can really mention are the San Antonio Spurs. And when it comes to Austin specifically, no sports teams whatsoever. And I bring this up because wherever you're moving from, it might be part of a tradition for you by yourself, with your girlfriend, with your wife, or with your family to do something as a family together and go to these sports events to watch your favorite teams play. And frankly, in Austin, all we really have and pride ourselves in having are the Texas Longhorns. It's a college team, so we have college hoops, college football. Those are big deals here. But if you want anything remotely professional, you have to go to San Antonio and watch the Spurs. Me growing up, I'm a humongous NBA fan, diehard. I'm a historian, I study it, I played it for a while myself, and it was always a struggle growing up in a city that had no pro NBA franchise. If I wanted to go to a game, it'd have to be a whole day or weekend trip to drive all the way down to San Antonio and watch the Spurs. And don't get me wrong, that can be a lot of fun. It's not like I can just say, hey, I got some tickets for the game on Thursday night. Let's just head downtown and watch them play. No, it's much more of an event. And so if you're into basketball and you're thinking of San Antonio, great choice, you've got a pro team. But if you're into football, if you're into baseball, you're not going to have that in San Antonio if you're used to having that wherever you're coming from. And of course, Austin, you're going to have none of it unless you're really into college sports. Personally, not my thing. I'd rather watch the pros play. So it is something to keep in mind if it applies to you. If you're relocating and sports really were a big part of your life, you enjoyed how it brought you and other strangers together, you can get into the college thing here in Austin, or you can focus primarily on basketball in San Antonio, but neither of these two cities are really going to offer much in terms of sports. So keep that in mind. Now, before we get to the subject of cost of living, which is what we're all waiting for, I want to talk about something almost equally as important, and that would be the subject of food. And when I say food, I really mean tacos, because when you're comparing cities in Texas, you'll have everything else. You'll have the sushi, you'll have the steaks, all this good stuff, but the tacos, that's how you really find out which one wins. And while my fellow Austinites will surely disagree with me because I adopted this mindset and perspective as well for the longest time, I've got to keep it real with you guys. San Antonio has the better tacos. It has to be said. Now, I'm not trying to crap on the tacos in Austin because it's amazing. I mean, Austin has some of the best tacos, whether it's from just, a mom and pop shop or you're going to a food truck. But regardless of how you're getting your tacos in Austin, they're gonna blow you away. It's absolutely insane. And more of them will probably have avocado here because frankly, Austin is more of an avocado type of city. You'll see long beards and some IPAs and some tacos with avocado. That's very much the Austin culture. I'm just poking a little fun at my own city, so I'm allowed. But San Antonio, especially when you factor in the culture, you can't beat them. And if you are going to San Antonio, remember these names because I will hook you up. Ricky's Tacos, Henry's Puffy Tacos, and Tacos and Salsa. Those are the best three I've heard of and been to. I could be missing some because again, I'm not a local San Antonian, so I might be missing that cool, very hip place that no one knows about yet, but off the top of my head, there you go. And if you're going to Austin, be on the lookout for Valentina's, Las Trancas, Taco Joint, and Veracruz. Now, I would say Veracruz is my favorite of the bunch, simply because they're migas. If you try one of their migas, which is just, it has eggs, it has fried tortilla. I'm really working my accent. My last name is De Ovando, so I'm half Spanish. I'd be doing my family shame if I didn't pronounce these things correctly. They have these fried corn tortillas bits chopped into the eggs, and you've got onions, you've got potato if you want, you've got bell peppers. I guess I'm just a sucker for migas, so if that's your thing too, or if tacos in general are your thing, Veracruz is my favorite of the bunch. They're all very good. And obviously this is less of a local joint anymore. It did originate in Austin, but if you haven't heard of Torchy's Tacos, it's less hip and trendy now. Now you'll find them in Oklahoma, you'll find them really anywhere. I mean, even in Austin, you can find them in the suburbs now, but it did start in the heart of downtown Austin, and I guess it's still independent, but because there's chains now, it doesn't have that same appeal that a lot of locals will want. But if you want queso, if you want some damn good tacos, which is their slogan, I'm not being paid, I promise, check out Torchy's as well. And you're bound to find them in San Antonio. And man, I am freaking hungry now, so we have to move on. We're gonna move on. So now, last but certainly not least, let's talk about the cost of living when comparing San Antonio to Austin, Texas. And spoiler alert, San Antonio wins in a landslide, but let me explain why. Now the numbers vary because there's a number of sources as well that give different numbers, but the most common two numbers I see in terms of overall cost of living between the cities is that Austin is either 15% higher to live in than San Antonio in general, or it's 33% higher, which is more than double the 15 to live in Austin than San Antonio. Now for the sake of this example, let's go with the more appealing number, which is 15%, although personally, being in real estate doesn't sound about right, but for the sake of my example, humor me. With it being 15% higher, not even the 33, but 15% higher to live in Austin, you would need $58,000 of income a year versus just $50,000 in San Antonio. Now, if we're going with the 33% number, that's going to be a lot higher. Just to isolate a certain statistic, homeowners alone will pay about 48% more to live in Austin than to live in San Antonio. So let's break those numbers down real quick. Now, I am definitely going to be referring back to my notepad for this one because I'm not about to try and BS you guys and pretend I have all of this memorized. No way in hell. So let's get to it. Picture, if you will, Austin, San Antonio, and the US with a line underneath them and then a line dividing each of them between each other. The national average for the United States is always going to be at 100 with each category, and then the respective cities are going to vary in percentage points in relation to the 100, if you're following me. So the first on the list is going to be transportation. Now, with the national average of transportation being that flat 100, Austin 110, San Antonio about 99, so the national average. My guess, more expensive gas here in Austin and more toll roads. I think the public transportation here leaves a bit to be desired. I'm not sure it's amazing in San Antonio either, but we do have more drivers here and we do have more toll roads here. So that with the gas is gonna bump up your transportation costs. Utilities, national average being 100, Austin is at 99, right about the average. San Antonio, 94, cheaper than the average. On the subject of health, national average being 100, Austin, 94, San Antonio, 93. So very comparable in that respect. Food and groceries, national average 100, Austin's a 96, so a little bit cheaper than the national average, which is cool. San Antonio, 91, so even cheaper than that. Now housing, this is where it gets juicy. The national average for housing, calling it 100, Austin is 159, let's call it 160. San Antonio is 76. So 24% cheaper housing in San Antonio than the national average. Austin is about 60% more expensive than the national average in housing, which means Austin is a good 85% more expensive to live in for housing than San Antonio. On that note, let's look at actual median numbers. National average for a home is about $231,000 right now. In Austin, about $370,000, $375,000. San Antonio, about $175,000. Just in a different world, about 200 grand difference to live in San Antonio and buy a house and to buy one here in Austin. And last but not least, everything averaged together, everything combined, the overall cost of living, your national average in the US is 100. Austin's going to be 119, so 19% higher than the national average to live in. San Antonio is going to be 89, so that's 11% cheaper than the national average and 30% cheaper to live in overall than Austin, Texas. And on the subject of families, I'm sure many of you watching this are considering moving not just yourself, but your family as well to one of these respective cities. And to be honest with you, both cities are great for families. I can vouch for that. A lot of people move to Austin, particularly the burbs, Cedar Park, Leander, Georgetown, Liberty Hill, Round Rock, for families, even North Austin as well. We actually shot a video about the safest areas in Austin, Texas for families, so be sure to check that out. But what I will say about San Antonio is for those first-time buyers, let's say you're newly married, let's say you haven't planned a family yet, or maybe you have one on the way, or whatever your situation is, the affordability in San Antonio really suits and benefits that first-time buyer much more so than Austin. On that note, one of my best friends in the whole world who I've known since I was 6 years old, still close to this day. I love him to death. He lives in San Antonio now. We actually, grew up together here in Austin, but he went to school in San Antonio and he's created his life in San Antonio. And of course, he's my age now, late 20s, and he's actually about to buy his first home. Now, a lot of people in their mid to late 20s, they might be homeowners, which is great, but a lot of them are renters. They might prefer apartments. And it goes to show though, if you're in that age bracket and you are considering moving to either Austin or San Antonio, I'm speaking to you right now. Unless you have deep pockets and you're willing to stretch the budget, as many of you I'm sure can. But if you can't and you are, just a young working professional and you're trying to save your money or whatever it may be, think about San Antonio because you can get more bang for your buck, significantly cheaper, and it's better for those first-time home buyers. Not to dissuade you from Austin, but I'm not going to let my bias and love for Austin get in the way of that. it's a safer option in terms of affordability for sure. So I wanted to make that point. So whether it's Austin, whether it's San Antonio, whether it's the right commute to work, whether it's the right school districts for your kids, whether it's being by the right golf course, by the right nightlife, whatever it is, we pride ourselves in making the relocation process as easy as possible for you or you and your family, and placing you in that perfect spot that makes your life so much easier. It's what we're good at, so we do it. But the only way we can do that is by you reaching out to us. So be sure to email us, be sure to call us, be sure to text us any time of day, any day of the week. We absolutely love the reach outs we get from YouTube, and we've got your back when moving to Austin, Texas. And again, we put out tons of new content like this and much more every week, so be sure to subscribe to the channel for more, ring the little bell so you're notified each time we put out a new video. Comment down below with questions, with video ideas, with disagreements, with agreements. Like the video as well to help us grow. And until the next one, you guys, we'll catch you later.